friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop, and we have a harmony guitar, and you can hear things rattling around in there. That's because there's all kinds of loose parts in there, including braces and things like that. This guitar would be one of those where, and therefore maybe we can just stop the comments right up here in the front. It's not worth fixing. I mean, in terms of monetary value, it isn't worth putting a lot of money in it. It's a relatively inexpensive old harmony guitar, and it's a sentimental issue. It belonged to the customer's father, and that is all we're trying to do. Is we're going to restore, the memory here is what we're restoring. We're not really, the guitar is sort of secondary in a sense, but this guitar needs a lot of work. It really does. They want it playable, but I can just tell looking down the top that the neck needs to be reset. You can almost see it in the picture there. If you look at it, you can see that neck angle is headed up from right about here. So it definitely needs a neck reset. There's no question about it. It also has several braces loose on the inside. I know at least 2 are loose completely. And, here's and this bridge has been replaced. Apparently the father was a kind of a do-it-yourselfer kind of guy, and I can tell that he put this on there. It's definitely not the right kind of bridge for this guitar. This is a classical guitar bridge. I wish it had a different bridge on there, actually. It would make it a little easier to do this work. He did bolt it on there. I think, I can't remember now, I looked in it earlier, but it's either bolted on where these are or here. I can't remember. But anyway, there's bolts through there. So the bottom line is, what do we do with this guitar? What's the easiest way to fix it? I could fix a lot of it through the sound hole. But in this particular case, I kind of think it would make sense to go ahead and just take the back off of it. I think I can get the back off, reasonably easy, although it's never easy because it does have binding on it, unfortunately. Or at least I think it does. Yeah, it looks like it's got binding. It's been refinished, and it's hard, and the finish is over that binding and stuff. It's hard to tell, but it does look like that's a binding on there. I don't know if that's a wood binding or it's a plastic binding. It looks like it's a tortoise shell now that I see it. Yeah, it is tortoise shell. In places where the finishes wore off, I can tell it's tortoise shell. Otherwise, it just looks brown. So that might be a real issue, taking the back off with that tortoiseshell binding on there. I kind of wish the binding wasn't on there. That means it's a little bit better guitar too. I mean, they didn't put binding on all these old harmonies. The top on it is actually fairly decent wood. It'll probably have a halfway decent sound once we get it fixed up. But I'm tempted to take the back off of it. The reason is I do my cheater's neck reset that way. In other words, I can fix all the problems in there, and then when I put it back together, I can torque the neck back to where it goes, glue the back on it, and then I don't have to take the neck joint apart and do all that. Now, I will look here first and see if the neck joint is loose. If it's loose, we might as well just take it out anyway. I can't honestly say for sure, but I believe it is loose, maybe a little bit. So, I don't know. I'm debating. I'm going to think on it a little bit before I make my final decision on whether I take the back off, because the back looks like it's in pretty good shape. I hate to take the thing off, or just take the neck out. But either way, we got to fix these braces on the inside. So let me think on it a little bit, and then we'll make our decision. Done a pretty careful examination of this, and it definitely needs a lot of work. This brace belongs about right here, and the reason I know that is because the end of it's broke off right here, and that piece is still sticking up in there. There's another brace about right here that's completely missing. This top is sunk in right in here, and there's a brace. That brace is about here that's missing, and there's a brace that goes right through here that's loose. And when I pick that brace up, that automatically lifts this middle here quite a bit. I don't know if you can see that flexing or not, but it's lifting that up quite a bit, just pushing that brace up where it goes. This pick guard is very loose, and as a matter of fact, I think I can just pop it off there. I'm going to take my time with it a little bit here. I don't want to break it. Yeah, it popped off. So that's a good thing, because I don't want anything extra on here when I glue all this anyway. I think it'll be better. And I'm really having second thoughts. I do not want to take the back off of this because of that old frail binding. They want to keep it as original as possible to the man. Again, we're restoring a memory, not trying to make a perfect guitar. If we were trying to make a perfect guitar, we'd take this bridge off and put a different bridge on there. You know, they want to keep the bridge if we can keep it. The neck angle is so poor that I'm tempted to go ahead and just take the neck off of here. With the neck off, it's just easier to manipulate the body around and then glue up all the braces from the inside, and I think I can get them glued up from the inside, even though it's a lot of work. There only appears to be 3 that need the work, so I think I can do the work through the sound hole. And for me, that's a lot less damaging than taking off this binding and all the work that is involved in repairing all that when you have to put it all back together. And the neck is loose a little bit anyway, so I think we're going to steam the neck off and go from there. You can see I've got some cardboard here to try to help protect it a little bit. I'm going to heat up the end of the fretboard. While that's heating up, I'm going to heat up my knife under the tip end of this iron. Let's just see if we've made any progress here. I've already taken an X-Acto knife and cut all the way around here so that I've loosened up the finish to the neck. They've refinished this thing, and there's a lot of finish stuck between the neck and the top. But I would like to get it cut loose here first. It looks like it's going to come loose pretty easily. So I'm heating my knife up on my iron here. It gets real hot real fast, and much hotter than you might think. And that lets that slide under there pretty easily. And you can see the knife's going under there pretty easily. A lot of guys use those big, wide, thick things, but anything wide is harder to push. You use something narrow like this. Now, granted, the narrow has its disadvantages in that it can dig in much more. So you got to be careful with that, but it definitely will go into tight places much faster and much easier. A lot less effort. I think we've got it loose as far as we need to. I'm going to pull this fret out now and see what we've got there. Just based on looking at everything, the way it's built, the taper in the neck, the block that's in there, I'm assuming, and it is an assumption, I have to admit, that this is just your standard dovetail joint. So we're going to try to drill the little holes down through here. I'm going to check the needle size on my steamer here, and it's at a 0.07475. So we're going to look for a drill bit that's a little bit bigger than that, but not much bigger. And here we've got a 7.3, so that's just a hair too small. And this one's a 92. So that's these are metric bits that I have here, and I just don't want to drill a great big hole. The width of the fret is about 80 something, about 80. So this is going to, you know, this is 92, so it's going to protrude just a fraction of a hair on both sides. I don't think you're going to even see it, and we can always fill it. So this is just about the best size bit that I can get away with here, the biggest. I'm going to start by just drilling straight down in, just by eye. Yeah, I felt the pocket right there. I felt the pocket. Yep, no problem. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here And again by eye, and I'm going to try to hit that same pocket. Now I know about where it's at. Yep, hit it again right there. It's a little bit of an angle that direction. I'm exaggerating, but it's a little bit of an angle that direction. I'm going to come over here and see if we can hit it again. Yep, I think we hit it again. I can feel it. So I think we're in good shape. Yep, I think we hit it all 3 times. So now I've got my little steaming needle here, and it does fit the hole pretty well, no problem. This is just a bicycle inflation thing. I just have a simple little tea kettle that I've made adapters here to fit real good and tight. And this is fixed where it could blow off of there if it had to. Plus there's little tiny steam holes here on the edges where the pressure shouldn't build up too greatly. I'm always leery about steam pressure because it can really be something that you got to worry about. I have my little Coleman camping stove here. I will have the heat on this down here on the ground, letting the steam rise up this tubing into the neck. And that's the way it works. I don't know if that worked or not. That was the first time I ever tried to use time lapse. So we'll find out later if it worked or not. But anyway, we got the neck out of there in just about 10 minutes. It's 11:21 now, which is a couple of minutes after I got this out. And it was like 11:08 when we started. So it was roughly about 10 minutes from start to finish once we actually started applying the steam. And it came out just as clean as it can come out. What I do is I put the steam in there and I just wiggle it as much as I can. Just keep wiggling it, keep wiggling it, just keep wiggling it. Not real hard, just small wiggles. And then, I try to rock it, I try to up and down it, I sideways it, and just little bitty movements and just keep it moving though while that steam's going in there. And then what I did was I turned it over. I put a piece of leather on top of the heel here, like this. And then I took this rubber mallet and I just tapped the heel. And I just keep tapping it, tapping it, tapping it, tapping it, pop, it just popped loose. Came right out. No problem at all. You can see there's no tear out, none whatsoever inside there either. Came out real nice and clean. Well, we'll let it dry a couple of days here just to let it dry out real good. And then we can go about the business of putting it back together. But while I've got it apart, and while the rest of the body is not affected by that, so I'm going to go ahead and work on this top and start putting the braces back in here. I'm using kind of a low-tech method to figure out how big of a brace I need to build in this area here. I'm looking through the mirror and I'm looking at the top, and you can see that there's a brace missing right about in here and where the old brace used to be. So what I'm doing is just going to take a ruler, go through and just try to measure approximately how far in that is. Looks like it's about 2 5/8 inches from this sound hole here, and it's difficult to say exactly because I can't really get in there and measure it well, but I'm going to try. Maybe 2 5/8 to 2 3/4, something like that. What that allows me to do then is measure up here, and then I can figure out how long that that brace needs to be going across here. Say 2 3/4 right there, and then go to the back side, and it's about 3 1/16. So what I can do then is line the brace up across the guitar as perpendicular as I can to the top. Go in here and measure this. 2 3/4 is about right there. And roughly 3 1/16 would be about right there. That's pretty good. So I've got it pretty close to where I think it is inside there. Once I've got it located on the top here, I can mark off, and I'm going to leave a little bit because the kerfing is in there. So I'm going to go inside the kerfing here and come across like so. So I have an idea about where it should be cut off at. I can cut these off now, and I'll be pretty darn close to what the old brace used to be inside there. I might have to shorten it a hair yet or something like that. I've already got this brace material is very high quality spruce. I don't know if you can see the edge grain in there or not. Try to bring it up close where you can see it. And so it's very high quality spruce, higher quality than what was in there. But I've already got it to the exact same thickness, literally to the 1,000th of inch. You can't feel the difference. So I'll probably actually cut it, narrow it down first, and then we'll cut it off and put the angles on there. So anyway, we're just making pretty much identical braces all the way around, and to match what used to be there. All right, I think as you can see, we've got this one cut. Now, if I cut it well, then if I put it in place here, it ought to be measuring pretty close to what it's supposed to be measuring, which is 2 3/4, and it measures right on the dot. So, yeah, so I think I've done a good job on making this. We'll just more or less mimic the angles here, and to do that, all we really do is we just take and set this at about the right length there, and just roughly copy the angles that this brace had on it. And they're usually not critical, they're just close. I'll just take a bandsaw and rough that out, and then I'll just plane it down smooth. That's what the end product looks like. It matches the old braces really well. For my taste, these braces are too big and too clunky, but we're not going for perfect sound here. We're going for originality, or making it as close to the original as possible. And obviously the color is going to be different because we're talking new spruce as compared to aged spruce, so it's going to take a while for that to look the same, and it may never look the same, but at least it does approximate the same shape. And that's approximately what it would look like on the inside of the guitar up underneath the top there. It's going to look something like that. Before we put this one in though, there's one in front of it here that's real loose, and we're going to glue this one back in place. Well, just for grins, I tried to see if this brace would just go ahead and pop loose. It won't. It's really glued from here to there. It's glued pretty solid. So I'm going to just get glue in here. It's pretty open, so it shouldn't be too hard to get glue in there. It's just that it's a gravity thing. So what I'll do is hold it up like this and take my bent paintbrush and get glue underneath this brace all the way along here. Yeah, it looks like we've got pretty good coverage there, best I can tell. And I'm looking on the back side of it now, and I can see it's all the way through. So that's a pretty good indication that we're good. So now we just need to get in there with some clamps and clamp it up tight. Let it set a while, and we should be good to go. Just going to use this wooden block here to span the top, to help flatten the top. Let you take a look in there. Clamp is on the brace, and you can see the glue squeeze out. So we've got glue squeeze out on both sides. It's looking real good. Now I'll reach in there with my damp towel, and we'll take a look in there and see how that looks. Yeah, looking pretty good, but it can be better. So I'm damping one of these brushes down, and I've bent the handle a little bit where it should help me get up in there a little better. Yeah, that did a pretty good job. I think we're in pretty good shape there now, so let's go ahead and put the other clamps on. And once again, I'll put the mirror in there where I can see where I'm putting the clamp. Literally perfect right there. And now we'll put one more clamp on real close to dead center there where the last place I glued it was. Now we've got very good clamping pressure on that brace all the way across to here. I got in there before, I don't know if I had it on camera or not, but I got in there with a dry brush and just dusted everything out from underneath there as best I could and cleaned it out as best I could. So I don't think there was much old glue because it's the hide glue and it's pretty brittle and it's chipped off. As a matter of fact, a lot of the chips were out here, you know, when I was rattling it around, you could hear them rattling in there, and we cleaned all that out. So I got in there and cleaned it as best I could with the tools that I had. Anyway, I don't expect it to ever come loose again. It matches up real well and it's glued real well. And now this top is no longer sunk right here. From here to here, the top was sunk really badly. You could see it. Now you can see with the clamps on there that the top is all flat all the way from here all the way to the center. So it's looking good, looking real good. Okay, it's day 2 on the little harmony guitar, so we're going to remove the clamps. I have a feeling that, yeah, that's perfectly flat across there. Now you can look across it this way and see that it's absolutely flat where it was, you know, definitely dished under before. So that fixed that. Now we're going to get these other braces in here. I've noticed that the you know, and I'm sure it come from removing the fretboard and stuff. This top is pulled up loose here. The seam right here is loose, and it's loose across the top of the block. So I'm going to get all that glued up first, and I'm going to go ahead and clamp that and let that set for about an hour before I mess with this brace across here. You can see I've got this side propped up quite a bit higher because it's more loose, and that gives me exposure to this edge. And then I've got, you know, you can see what it looks like from the end there. There's not much room with those wide wedges, but I'll, you know, work glue underneath these ends too and move the wedges around. So I'm first going to just put it on this long edge here. Got her laid back down here. Now we will just clean it up a little bit of glue squeeze out that's got the ends lined back up there. That's looking good. Alright, let me get a damp cloth and wipe off the extra glue. You can see how I've got her clamped up here. Just cleaning off a little extra glue squeeze out now. Holding her tight to the block on the inside, and this is just keeping the two halves level. That should hold it. We'll give that about an hour to set up before we mess with anything else. I've done a dry fit test in here, and I was able to line it up pretty well, and this part that's chipped off here is still up inside the guitar, so I'm hoping that I can use that to help line this up and get it back in the exact same place. And we'll get several clamps on here, and it shouldn't be that hard, but yet it's tricky to line it up in there. I'm just hoping I can get it lined up as well as it was originally. Best I can tell, I've got it lined up real good. The clamps are holding real good. I'm going to put 2 more clamps on it though, just to make sure the brace is up to the top as tight as it can be. Based on what I can tell with the mirror inside there, I've got this lined up pretty good. All the clamps are in place. We'll just have to let it sit there a while and do its thing. I finally got that brace back in here, glued up. I did it off camera. I don't know why that was so hard to line up in there. I did it dry, no problem at all, lined almost the first shot. So when I put the glue on there, it wouldn't line up. I would get it crooked every time and try to get in there and move it, and it would fall, and you know, it was a tough alignment. But once I got it, it was simple. I mean, you know, once you get that alignment, then just put the rest of the clamps on it. It's a pretty much easy peasy at that point. But I think it's in there real well. It's clamped up. I can see squeeze out the whole length of the brace, so I think we're in good shape. I'm going to take the clamps off of this now. We now have 3 braces repaired inside the guitar. I think there is maybe one other loose one or something, because got a little glue on there. Probably squeezed out and ran down. That's what it did too. I can feel it. Yeah, there's quite a glob right there in that one spot where that clamp was. But anyway, I think it's solid now. It's really solid across here, where it was really a mess right across here before. So I think we're good there. I still think I hear something slightly loose. Maybe not. Well, prior to gluing that brace in, I thought I could hear something vibrating in there. Now I don't think I do, so we may be okay. Well, I'll keep my eye on that, but right now I don't hear anything wrong, so I think we're good. Now we're going to start working on setting up the neck and the neck joint back to this bridge. I have set the neck in here. You know, the positive part of this is that the neck joint is really good. It's really a tight joint. It fits down in there snug, and if I drove it, I think I could get it the rest of the way down in there, and it would be almost tight enough to string it up, I believe. But I'm about 100 thousandths from going down in there. I would say a few millimeters from going down into, you know, to having it all the way flush. And even at that, even though it's high, I'm still low back here by a couple of millimeters. I would maybe 3 millimeters. I would just guess. Again, about maybe 100 thousandths of an inch, something like that. And that's just a guess. I don't really know. I'm just guessing, but you know, it's quite a bit low here. And you know, these old harmonies, what's weird about it is, you know, they had good equipment to make a real good joint. I mean, it's a real good joint. It's about as tight and snug as you'd ever want to make one. But I don't think I've ever seen, the best way I can say this, I don't think I've ever really seen an old harmony guitar that couldn't benefit from a neck reset. Almost every one of them are, you know, have their necks at this angle rather than this angle, you know. And it's crazy, but it's true. So I don't know. They had a good machine to make a good tight joint. They just didn't have it at the right angle or something. I don't know. Just about every harmony I've ever seen needs a neck reset. And I would say that goes for those old silver tones too, which I think were made by Harmony. I'm trying to decide which way I'm going to tackle this. There's a couple of different ways you can tackle it. But I think in this particular case, what I'm going to actually do is shave off part of this heel. When I shave off part of this heel, you know, and I'm talking a very small amount, probably a 1/16 of an inch right here, just a couple of millimeters probably. If I shave off just a little bit right here to nothing up here, that's going to change the angle significantly. The problem with doing that, when you do that, like when you cock it this way, then that loosens this dovetail. So we'll have to do maybe a minor shim through, you know, thicker down here to almost nothing up here on a shim to shim it up. I'm not going to worry about the shim right now, though. I got to get the angle first. Once I get the angle, then we can start deciding how tight we need to make it, and you know, how much of a shim we may need. I'm pretty sure we will need a shim though, because this angle's off by quite a bit. Like I said, it's not even down, and it's still below the bridge. As I mentioned, this bridge isn't the most ideal bridge for this anyway. I wish we had a different bridge, but that's what's there, and they wanted to kind of keep that since this is a sentimental fix. Just double checking it. The face of this is good and clean, so I really can't do anything there. I mean, like if it had glue on it or something, or if it was sticking up, that would change my angle also. But right now that's pretty flat and pretty clean. So, but now that I think about it, it looks to me like they glued the neck on this outer surface to the finish. The finish is there. So I am going to scrape this inside this V. I'm going to scrape it down to bare wood. If it's not bare wood, it just doesn't hold as well. And that will, by itself, change the angle a little bit too. So I'm going to do that first. Okay, that didn't take long at all. That was pretty brittle finish. So we got that off. I just want to see if that loosened it up anywhere. It'll go up in there all the way. Yeah, that loosened it up some, and it did go down a little further. Now we're only a millimeter or two from going all the way in. We were probably 3, maybe 4 millimeters before, but it definitely lowered it some more. But I know that's just going to make it worse back here, and it did, of course. It is really tight. I tell you what, that is a tight joint. It's kind of sad that I'm going to have to mess it up, because that's really what you're doing when you're cutting a new angle here. There's a glue ledge on the outside edge here that I'm just knocking off to get it smooth. The plastic heel here creates a little bit of a problem in that I have to cut that off in order to shave this neck down. Not a big deal. Just, it looks like it's going to shave pretty easily. I was afraid it might be real brittle. You do have to be careful doing this because you can chip out the wood off the side, so you have to be sure that you're cutting in or straight down. You can't cut out like that. You will chip this out for sure. But I have to cut across the grain right here just on this heel, but I have to stop just shy of going all the way to the outside. And then I have to come back and cut off that outside. Okay, that did pretty good. So let's just see if that loosened it up and how much and whether it goes all the way down. Well, it didn't loosen it up very much actually. It does let me tip it a little bit. And I'm just going to see if that changed. Yeah, that by pushing down on this, it's making quite a bit of difference here. It's just about level with the top there now, but I think we're getting a little bit of a false reading there, so kind of work on it a little bit more. Doesn't take very much, I'm telling you, to change it a lot. It really doesn't. In my previous video where I reset the neck on my own guitar, I only shaved off a couple of millimeters at the most, and it changed it a lot. And that's what I'm doing here. Right now I'd say I've taken about a millimeter off. I think it'll probably go down in there now. And maybe not. Almost. Well, it's actually touching back here now. It's very close to being all the way in there. And the neck angle right now is different than it used to be, so let's just see what that looks like. Still a little low, but the joint looks pretty good. Okay, on this side here, I've got a little bit of a gap going on, so I'm going to shave this side here to smooth it out. Looking down it now, we're almost flat with this, but not quite. It's probably still a hair proud, but just a hair proud. I could probably force it and glue it and make it flat. When I put pressure down on it, we're just about right. So it's still got a little ways to go, but it's not bad. It's getting pretty close. It's amazing how little you have to do here to change it, 18 inches away. It changes it a lot and very quickly. I think I'll just show you here. You can see if I turn it the opposite way that I've opened up a slight crack there. It's not very much, but that crack, when you close it up, changes the angle a lot at the length. We're down in there pretty much tight now, and the angle is tight, so let's just see what we got here now in terms of, well, we're just about level with it now, just about, and the joint looks good. When I close it up, it looks good and tight. There's no gap there or anything. You can see when I close it up, you can't tell I've cut along there, which is good. That's what you want. I can still see I got a little tighter spot right here. This side looks pretty good, so looks like I just need to shave a tiny amount right off of here. I think you'd be really hard pressed to do a measure job and get this because we're talking just paper thin shavings here. I mean, they're thinner than paper. I'm sure if you held them up, you'd see through them. It's really hard to measure this. If I could see if I can measure how much I've taken off of this, it'll be difficult to do. I would say I've taken off 30 thousandths. That's that much. You know, if you can see the gap there, I've taken off that much off the heel. And it's made a big difference. I mean, because before, you just look down this and you could just see that the neck skied up in an upslope like this. Now it's pretty flat when you look down it. And it may even be just about right now. Boy, it's getting very close, I can tell you. When I look down it, I can tell it's very close. It's certainly perfectly level. It's not above level at this point. I like to see the neck, not including the fretboard, be just a hair lower than this. And we're just about there. We really are just about there. One of the problems I'm having is that there's a bulge in this area of this top, so it's a little hard to decide what the flat plane is here too. It's just about to hit the top of it there, but I think we do better by taking a hair more off of this thing yet. It's very, very, very close, but it's not there yet, I don't think. So I'm going to shave off another, I'm sure it's going to be less than 10 thousandths. First thing I'm looking at is the joint. If it's still tight, it is. Okay, the angle, it's down good and snug to the body now. That looks pretty good. Let's see what it looks like with this now. Still kind of showing a hair low, but just a hair now. I'm going to look down this fretboard again. I thought the fretboard looked pretty good, and I think it is. Got my close-up glasses on here. I need to take them off for this. The fretboard doesn't have a adjustment in it. There's no truss rod. For my money, what looks like's happening, it looks pretty flat to about here, and then it sort of looks like it's coming back up a hair right in here. And with the straight edge on there, I'd say that's definitely true. Actually, it's starting up about right here. There's kind of a low spot about right here. So I'm going to try to level this fretboard out a little bit first. There's no straightening it. That's not going to happen. But what I can do is knock these frets down up here quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and put this fret back in, and then I'm going to give the whole fretboard a good leveling just to try to make sure that I've got it as flat as I can for testing this angle. On this fretboard, I've noticed one more thing, and there's a long, slow bow, just a real long underbow on the treble side. On this side, it's almost perfectly flat. So it definitely changes from one side to the other. You can see it when you look down it. The other thing is, although I've got the angle pretty close, this now sits just about level with the saddle. I still don't trust it. I think I'm just a hair high still. I mean, I think I just need to lower the peg head down just a little bit more. I just feel more comfortable with that. So I am going to take off some more here. Shave off maybe another 10 thousandths across the bottom here. I've cut a piece of hard maple. I made it 40 thousandths of an inch thick here, which is about the gap that I've cut off of the bottom of this. And that's just an approximate. I've made it the right width for this, and it's too long, but I can use it for the other side. And I've already marked a line across there where I can cut this off. I'll just, because it's so thin, I'm just going to score it with the X-Acto knife a couple of times and just crack it right there. I think it'll break right on that joint. Then I can glue that one in place right there. The way I'll do this is that it'll be 40 thousandths here and to nothing down at this end. But I'm just going to go ahead and glue it in at, you know, the full thickness because it's easy to clamp that way, and then I'll just shave it down with a chisel or whatever I need to use. Put this other one on this other side, draw a line on it where I want to cut it off. Just thought I'd show you how I glued the shims in there. The shims again are about 40 thousandths thick, and they're just laying right against the dovetail. I made these little tiny angle blocks so that I have something square to clamp to. Then I just put these little tiny squeeze clamps on there and just squeezed it down tight. We're going to let that set a few hours, then we'll plane that down and make it fit that dovetail joint real tight. I'm using the carbon paper method for showing where the high spots are. When you put the carbon paper in there and you slide this in, you can obviously see where the high spots are. So I'll carve those away and we'll do another test. Thought I'd just give you one good look at how I've been doing this. I've got it pretty close to final here. I just take a small piece of carbon paper, put it in there, do it like this. The carbon paper is a little bit awkward in one way, but boy, it leaves a good mark. It probably leaves the best mark of anything I've tried. I've used pencil lead leaves a real good mark too, but the problem with pencil lead is it leaves everything else so dirty. You got to clean it all back up. But the carbon paper, if you can get it in there like that, you can obviously see where the high spots are. All those dark spots are high spots. So that's what we got to clean off, and then it makes it fit much tighter. All I do now is just carve off the high spots very carefully. If you do it well, then what actually ends up happening is you get more and more black each time you do it because you're making better and better contact. We're actually making pretty good contact if you look across there. So what I'll do now is carve this all off and then try to level it with a scraper or something like that to get, because we're getting pretty close to the final here. And it is pretty much just as I expected. It's thicker down here and it gets thinner up here on the wedge. So that's just what you should expect when you do this kind of work, and it is definitely doing that. So now I'm just going to take the scraper and try to scrape it a little bit more level just to get the high bumps and things out of it. I'm going to do a dry fit, and we ought to be getting very close to the final here. And I can tell you that it fits very, very well. I can literally pick the guitar up I've got my hand under the back just in case, but I can pick the guitar up with that dovetail no problem at all, and even shake it. It's pretty good. It's pretty tight. So, you can't hardly get one to fit much better than that. And it's even hard to get it back out of there once you get it in there, so you got to kind of bang it a little bit with the heel of your hand. It fits so well that you can even see some little minor black marks there just from sliding it in and out. And we'll work on those. dry fit it one more time, but not real hard if it goes. Yeah, it looks like it's getting pretty close. I'd say we're less than 1/8 of an inch from going all the way. And so what I'm going to do now is put the carbon paper in here, do one last clean out here, and it ought to be pretty good after this one. And you can see where the high spots are, and we'll take those off, and it ought to just about go in there now, I would say, after this. Yeah, I don't think I can quite drive it home yet. It's very, very close. You just wish it would get there, but if you look at the joint, and I think you can see it, it's just absolutely flush tight here too when you drive it in there. So there's no gap or anything. I don't know if you can see, but from the carbon paper, it leaves a little bit of residual blue from the opposite side of the carbon paper on the inside of that, and then that rubs off on here too. So you can, even without the carbon paper, you can kind of tell where you're high. It's getting so close, but yet it's still so far. It looks to me like, actually I probably still have 80 to 100 thousandths to go in terms of the height off of the guitar top right here. And I probably could force it, but you could also break something, so you don't want to force it. You just want, I mean, just the last little tiny bit, you want it to snug up real tight, but you don't want to really be forcing something where you're jamming it in there. I'm going to try a fresh piece of carbon paper here, and one more fitting with the carbon paper. Actually, before I do that, I can see some of the blue residual on the inside of here, and I'm going to rub that off. And I'll double check the fit one more time before I do the carbon paper. Yeah, it's very close, but it still needs more. The trick of the carbon paper is getting it to fold back in those dovetails, but it's so thin that it doesn't take up much room. So you just kind of got to let it get in there. Literally, it's super crazy tight. It's very hard to get it back out of there when you put it in there. That's it right there. We got her now. That is it right there. It is absolutely snug tight in there, and it just went down to where it's supposed to be. Well, good news all the way around. When I checked the neck angle, we're coming out across the top of that about, I don't know, 1/16 high, and that looks good to me. So I think we're about ready to glue this baby back in and see what happens. I've got the neck fitted in there good and tight right now, and I'm just double checking straightness, and I'm just putting it right alongside the fretboard, and I'm looking to see how much space on that side of the hole. I'd say we have 3/16 of an inch. On this side of the hole, I gotta admit, it looks like there's a hair more, but not much more. So I don't know if it just needs to be tweaked a little bit, or pretty close though. That's now they're about even. So just a little tweak, just a little torque there, just changed it enough. They're just about equal. I'd say they're just about exactly equal just from looks. So now we're just going to go ahead and get this thing glued in place, clamped up, and I've checked the angle again. The angle looks real good. I'm real happy with that. It's coming across the top of the saddle there by just a little bit. So we're in pretty good shape. Being that the goal of this is to restore it to playable condition, but try to keep the look and feel of the old guitar because of the grandfather. It's a sentimental thing. I'm not going to take all the finger grooves out or even try to. I'm just leveling it off to make it, flatter. A lot of the grooves will still be there, and which will show Grandpa's playing, and that's fine. But it'll look better and play better this way too. And plus we're just cleaning off a lot of the dirt this way. From the factory, you can see that apparently it was filed, or I guess it was from the factory unless Grandpa did it. You can see how it had been filed a lot across the fretboard there, and you can see the scratches going across the fretboard. Those are hard to take out when you go this way with the razor blade, but again, it's keeping with the old patina and the look and everything. I think it's going to be fine. I'm going to oil this up, and that'll make it look a little bit better too. Well, the first attempt at stringing it up to pitch, I'm getting a ton of buzzing off of the D string, but it's actually coming off of up here. I thought it was coming here. The action's probably a little bit too low. Not terribly low. Well, I mean, it is pretty low. It's probably around 80 thousandths at the moment, which is, pretty darn low. It's about right on the treble side, but as you start going through there, like the B string's already below 80, the G string's way below 80, the E string's below 80, the A string's below 80, and the D string's way below 80. We're probably going to have to put a slightly taller saddle on this, which, should be expected after you reset the neck anyway. It doesn't need to be a lot taller, but we're going to have to go, maybe 30 or 40 thousandths taller here. And we're also going to have to recut a nut. I was hoping to reuse this nut here. I mean, I could shim it up, which they've already got shims under it, and I was just going to leave those because, again, it's a Grandpa thing. I hate to put more shims under it, it's just real low right here. It's actually touching the strings. So, I don't know what to do with that. Going to give it a little bit of thought. Well, I think I might have left a few steps out on filming this, but we've got the strings on it now. It's all tuned up. The action is incredibly good. I don't think I'm bragging when I say I doubt seriously this thing has ever played this easy since it was brand new. Anybody that knows anything about these old harmonies and silver tones know that it's almost like playing on a barbed wire fence. I mean, they're just hard to play. The action is almost never low. Well, now this action is very good. It's 18 thousandths here, and it's about 80 to 90 thousandths in this area here. So it's very, very easy to play. It's got a pretty good sound. It looks pretty good. It's in bad shape. It's been broke all over the place, and Grandpa fixed it over the years, but it's actually in fairly decent shape. Okay, so let's see what she sounds like. I told Mary about us. I told her about her great sin. Mary cried and forgave me. Then Mary took me back again. She said if I wanted my freedom, I could be free evermore. But I don't want to be, and I don't want to see Mary cry anymore. Oh, devil woman, let go of me. Devil woman, let me be, and leave me alone. I want to go home. Mary's waiting and we've been down at her shack by the sea. Even after I heard her, my Mary's still in love with me. Devil woman, it's over. Trapped no more by your charm. 'Cause I don't want to stay, I want to get away. Woman, let go of my arm. Oh, you devil woman, let go of me.
Devil woman, let me be, let me alone. I'm going back home.
Well, there you have it, an old Marty Robbins number, Devil Woman. And who knows, that may have been played on this guitar before. There's a lot of things that this guitar's seen. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for taking a look.